Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Data Faces podcast. I'm David Sweenor, founder of Tiny Tech Guys, and your host for today's discussion. In this show, I talk with the real people who are actually making data, analytics, and AI work in the real world. What's exciting, what's messy, and what's coming next. Today, my guest is Rajeev Poexis, a co-founder and CEO at Poexis. He's helping growth marketers figure out how agentic AI can change how we run events, do ABM, and scale inbound. So today, we're going to get into the opportunities, risk, and what leaders need to do right now. So let's get into it. Rajeev, welcome to the Data Faces podcast.
Awesome to be here. Good to see you again, David. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you. And so can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing over at Poexis?
Awesome. So I'm the CEO and co-founder at a company called Poexis. My buddy, co-founder, Matt, and I started on this journey a couple of years ago when we started looking at just the rise of generative AI specifically and models. We started this company in full earnest last year. In a nutshell, we built Agentic AI to really accelerate go-to-market. That's really where it is. From anything from events to ABM to inbound demand generation, we work with GTM leaders to kind of accelerate their work. Myself, I've been in this space for a little over, I think, 20, coming on perhaps more like 24 years. Been around the block, if you will, in terms of product engineering, sales, and I like how you introduce it, the messy bits. That's where just like you, I learned a lot of lessons over the years, and I said, hey, this is a fantastic time to build. So here I am.
Well, excellent. We certainly appreciate having you here, and thank you for wearing sort of the Aloha shirt. You're the first guest that has ventured out there. I always wear one, and I hope encourage everybody to do so. So appreciate that. We're matching too, so it's great.
Oh, thank you. I asked my AI assistant, hey, what would fit the theme of the show? And Leo came back and said, this sounds to be a pretty fun place, and this might actually be the best fit. And my wife agreed, so I think it's a win-win.
That's all you really need. So, so you're deep into agentic AI, and if you look at all the headlines, it's going to do everything for everybody. It's going to solve world hunger, cure society's ills, or create them. I'm not sure, and a bunch of other things. I've seen some people say that these are totally autonomous, and sometimes when you peer under the covers, it's really just pre-scripted automations in my mind. So you're deep into this. How do you define it for B2B marketers, and how is it different from plain old regular AI?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think what better place to begin, really? To me, I think that the crux of the difference that agentic AI brings to the table is the ability to take action, to do something, right? And I think that's really the sort of pivotal point where AI becomes a lot more than what helps you sort of predict, what helps you analyze, perhaps even generate content, to really fundamentally taking actions. And if you are taking actions, you got to do that with a sense of not just agency that entails a level of trust, a level of autonomy, but also, quite importantly, a level of learning from mistakes. As you said, perhaps things are not perfect the first time around. And how do you quickly sort of learn from it? And that, to me, is fundamentally the definition of agency and agentic AI.
All right.
Yeah.
So it can take action on its own without sort of being pre-instructed, sort of figure
Yeah.
things out.
A degree of autonomy is where we really put it. And I think it's really important to kind of decide to what degree do you want to grant autonomy, on how narrowly you want to do it, and to what kind of sort of supervisory controls, how much of human sort of control in the loop and supervision do you want to instrument it. And I'm pretty sort of non-dogmatic about it. Whatever really drives outcomes and works at scale is what we work with customers on enabling.
Right. And so what I'm hearing then is really depending on the use case, you can set those thresholds however you want them. So maybe if you're sending in a coupon to somebody, low risk, you can let it maybe do it itself. If you're making more important decisions like credit or health or legal matters, maybe you want always a human in the loop. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really important to sort of look at this as this notion of sort of leveling up on that, right? In terms of leveling up in terms of what you're driving, leveling up in terms of autonomy, leveling up in terms of the sort of controls structures you put in place, the guardrails you put in place, the analytics you put in place, so that we can continually sort of learn and level up from what perhaps is a very sort of easy starting point to really driving outcomes that matter at the P&L level, at the board level.
Okay, I love this idea of leveling up. So, the MarTech stack, you look at these maps, it's completely, it's crazy. It's like a Where's Waldo. I don't even know all the technology out there, but what sort of mental shift do growth marketers need to be making to use agentic AI in their business?
No, I think you touch upon a very important point there. And I think in terms of mindset, and look, I've been in this space. I grew up with sort of my early days were with enterprise software. Then we saw the impact that cloud drove, right?
Mhm.
And it completely transformed the way we look at GTM, the way we look at product and everything. Fundamentally, I think the number one mindset shift that marketers and sellers and really sort of revenue leaders have to look at this is, how do I move from just analysis to agency, right? And I think that really is the sort of, as I said, kind of briefly earlier, the pivotal shift in terms of leveraging AI, leveraging analytics for just not for analysis sake. And as you said, quite frankly, the GTM landscape, especially the MarTech sort of landscape, is you could you could literally spend the next 5 years analyzing every little tool. Sometimes the market landscape looks like the patterns on my shirt.
Right.
It's you got to really zoom in like 10x to even look at what that function is, let alone the players in that space. To have that shift from I'm going to use, let's say, 100 tools, maybe 1,000 tools to solve very discrete problems, to step back, look at the big picture, identify what can really drive outcomes, and then to take action on it. And that's, I think, the pivotal sort of shift there. Now, obviously, that can only happen if you, as I said, look at the big picture, but also really think in terms of how can I drive value in the next 30 days, 90 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, hey, I'm going to take on a little segment of the big puzzle, and then I'm going to look at how I can effectively drive results in the next 30, 60, 90 days, not just the next 2 years or 3 years. That's the big culture shift, that bias to agency.
Okay. And so when you use the term, we're going to get to challenges in a minute because I think there's a bunch of them, but when you use the term analysis
Yeah.
and agency, what's the difference? Like, is analysis like summarization? Is it mathematical analysis? Is it all the above? Like how do you define these terms?
Yeah. I mean, it's as I said, I've got a very pragmatic approach to some of these things. I do think that agency fundamentally is what it does, not what it is. So in that sense, I'm a very pragmatic sort of
Sure.
you what it enables is, quite frankly, what is definitional about it. And I think what really analysis fundamentally, to really dumb it down and look at the very core of it, is it provides insights, right? Now, are those insights actionable, right?
Mhm.
Can they be acted on using some sense of effort, whether there is manual effort or automated effort, and whether that really augments, accelerates, or just automates, right? Most
Sure.
people look at automation as the be all end all of AI, and the reality is automation is table stakes. Like, to any new technology, it does involve, as the outcomes of the analysis come clear, automating certain aspects of what needs to be done. But then now we look at augmenting it and then look at accelerating it. And that's where really agency in the form of, hey, I'm going to do something about it, as opposed to
Right.
just analyzing it, really comes through. And really,
Okay.
if you think about it, I think in the past, let's say 5 to 10 years, I've seen the culture of just being data driven, which is phenomenal, right? those analytical muscles have really been worked on by marketers
Yep.
and revenue leaders. But sometimes analysis, to the extent that it's constantly just providing insights that you're not necessarily in a position to act on, can lead to paralysis. And
Right.
I think
Right.
that's where we really have to draw the line between analysis and driving actions out of it in terms of agency.
So, in terms of, and as a human, Rajeev, are we ready to cede control to the bots? And let me just share a little story. So, I used to work in yield analysis and
Mm.
semiconductors, and the routing through the fab. There's lots of tools. It's very sophisticated, and we're starting up a new fab. And they put a total automation of how these they call them lots. These weight boxes of wafers will go from tool to tool, but they put in an override function, so like the humans could override because they know better, and it actually slowed things down. Fast forward a year, they turned that thing off, and the fab performed much better because
Yeah.
the system could figure it out. So as a human, are we ready to give up the doing part of it to the
It,
robot?
yeah, it really depends, right? Like to me, there is no sort of, if you will, cut and dry response to yes or no. It really is the answer that we all hate, which is it depends. It
Depends.
depends on the level of the task, right? For instance, am I ready to give up my sense of individual agency on running on a factorial calculation or a linear regression or a correlation? Yes, we all open up our favorite calculator or spreadsheet or analytical tool and run that, right? We don't really think twice.
Right.
But am I ready to give up my sense of individual and collective agency on deciding where my marketing strategy should be, or what, for instance, at a personal level, what should be my priorities in terms of learning priorities for the next year? No. And I don't think that the framing of AI or AGI in some ways as this big monolithic blob of intelligence that takes on a life of its own is not just wrong, but extremely counterproductive. And I think when you deflate that blob of inflated expectations around, oh my God, AGI is going to take over agency as we know it, and we really look at this as augmenting human agency, augmenting your team's ability to execute on it, all of a sudden you are unlocking extreme value. And I think that again goes back to some of these things where we see there is a ton of value that could be acted on today and in the next 90 days. And look, we're all on this journey to kind of learn how this all can be effectively leveraged in the next 3 years, 5 years, right? Technologies like this take a little bit of time to kind of fully sort of come to life and drive results.
I love that, and I thought that was a great way to put it. And you started out with the calculations. I have my calculator here, so I'm not going to do
Yes.
I'm not going to do long division anymore. So, well, okay, that's something
One of the
I'm perfectly okay with outsourcing.
Exactly. And I think I took one of the scariest classes that I took back in grad school was around safety systems and systems engineering.
Mm,
And it's really important to kind of understand like what we take as natural today is really the outcome of several layers of abstraction, right? And I
right.
think humans are incredible in our ability to kind of build these social, organizational, cultural systems that provide effective outcomes with controls put in place. And AI is no different. And I think we really have to kind of forget about the deflate the hype bubble a little bit and really sort of look at what can realistically drive results.
Yeah, I liked how you put it earlier. The deflate the inflated expectation blob. I think you put it. So I love that. So we can't talk about AI without bringing up a report that just came out from MIT. Talk about AI fails to scale. I think the report, it was quoted as, the headline is, "Hey, 95% of these things fail." So what are the top reasons that you see? Why do these projects stall?
Yeah, look, it's funny. I looked at the report and a joke came to mind because I went to grad school there, and we used to joke that the institute only makes one mistake and they never admit it.
Right.
It's an insider joke, but in my case, they certainly did not admit it. But I think there's a lot that report is really a sort of validates what we are seeing out here, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it does a fantastic job in summarizing these early findings. What we really see is that whether you call it the trough of disillusionment or sort of the inflated blob of expectations around
Right.
AI, we see a lot of these pilots around AI just stalling. And I think the biggest sort of reason so far has been, quite frankly, the ability to look at ROI, right?
Mm-hmm.
The number one reason that most of these sort of pilots around AI, whether it is a starts off with everyone starts off with chatbot, right? And we're seeing incredible adoption. One of the key things that most people get wrong from the report is, oh my God, AI is not getting adopted. No, it's actually the opposite. There is near, if you look at the numbers, anywhere from 60% to 80% of the workforce or even higher is actually on a day-to-day basis using AI.
Yeah, everybody's using it. Whether your company bought the subscription to GPT or whatever service,
exactly.
That's a different question. You're using it anyways.
Right. We saw this in the
right.
early days of cloud, shadow IT, right? And now shadow AI is absolutely a real thing, unfortunately, in a lot of organizations' cases. But then, are you driving outcomes at the individual level,
Mm-hmm.
at the team level or the job function level, or are you really driving transformational sort of outcomes at the business level, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where really the report looks at it in more detail. And I think that, as I said, the lack of being able to articulate ROI at the P&L level, top line,
Yeah.
bottom line, outcomes, is absolutely the number one reason. The number two reason, quite frankly, again goes back to some of the themes that we opened up our conversation on, which is great. Now I'm able to generate 10 times content, 100 times content. I'm, let's say, 50% more productive in writing copy. What am I going to do about it?
Right.
And you see that all this incredible power and ability that automation in the form of generative AI has opened up, unfortunately gets deployed in perhaps counterproductive ways that kill ROI. If you basically take 10 times, 100 times more content and just spray and pray, there's a lot of work that pray is going to take on in that.
Right.
Praying gets easier. Praying gets, hopefully a lot more work is involved because
Mm-hmm.
it's simply not going to yield those dividends. And I think that thoughtful application of what you put AI to work for and on, I think is extremely important. And last but not the least, goes back to, look, you can spend the next, just like you can spend the next 2 years analyzing every marketing technology out there, you can also spend the rest of certainly this year and perhaps many years to come analyzing every single AI model. Like every single week, there's almost an amazing sort of announcement or advancement in the state of the art. All that analysis for many teams can lead to, what am I going to do in the next 30, 60, 90 days, and avoiding that. So it really tallies in that sense with the study findings. Obviously, I'm working off perhaps a smaller anecdotal set of early adopters for us, but it does ring a bell in terms of those top reasons.
Okay, that's super interesting to me. And I think what I'm hearing from you is, don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Start doing. I have this philosophy, and everybody's like, if you talk to people in the data world, hey, is your data, is it AI ready? Is it AI ready? It's never going to be AI ready. We've been talking about this for 25 years. Now, I'm not saying it's not important, and you can certainly improve upon its quality. But what I think you'd recommend that you can't do is sit and wait for it to be perfect and pristine, because that day is never going to happen. Things shift and things change, and you're always going to have issues with the data.
Especially as leaders, as you rightly pointed out, look, it's happening today, right? Not only are your competitors using it, your partners are expecting you to use it, but your employees, the people on the front lines, in the trenches, are using it today. Now, are you going to be able to effectively leverage it to do more than individual level performance, right? And that's really the question that in my opinion, most leaders really have to grapple with. And that's that fundamental culture shift from I'm going to be data-driven and analytical to also being I'm going to take action, and there's going to be a bias to action, and
Right.
I'm going to enable my team with whether it is agentic AI or aspects of analytics or aspects of other fundamental investments you have to make to enable them with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's dig down now. So we got sort of the high level, what's going on in the market. Let's talk about events. Let's talk about ABM. Let's talk about
Yes.
inbound. The sort of the keystone of any B2B marketing or function. For events, where do you see the most I guess untapped potential for agentic to drive attendance and engagement?
Yeah. No, so look, it's taking a step back. If you look into, as you rightly call them, really the cornerstones, right? The bread and butter of every marketing organization, certainly every sort of demand gen function. I always like to look at this as what's my 90-day horizon?
Mm-hmm.
What's my, the end of quarter? Everyone loves that, right? We all need to drive numbers towards the end of quarter, to the end of year,
Sure.
and the next sort of, let's say, 3 to 5 years, right? And when I look at something like events, look, having had a lot of scars on my back from running events with, let's just say, somewhat questionable pipeline outcomes, but an
Sure.
incredible event, incredible awareness, incredible top of funnel sort of activity. What's your 30-day, 90-day plan to kind of hit this quarter's numbers? And I think what is ironic, David, is that with all this digital noise, especially around AI
Yep.
and AI generated content, guess what's absolutely rising to the top for most of our customers? In-person experiences, human touch, high touch, right? So
Right.
what we're seeing somewhat ironically is that buyers are really tuning out of all this sort of the traditional digital outbound. Oh, I'm gonna just blast an email that's quote unquote personalized to tens of thousands of attendees. I'm gonna have like a single digit open rate. I'm gonna have even a more pathetic reply rate. Buyers are tuning out of that. What they are preferring is really super relevant, personalized, and oftentimes in-person experiences. And I think most event marketers get it, right? We've all been part of events where we thought,
Sure.
oh my God, the conversation there, the engagement there with the right people on the right topic is so valuable. But at the same time, how do I use AI to kind of really sort of make it more valuable, right? Because rightly so, CROs and CFOs and boards are asking, hey, are those events just awareness plays or are they also pipeline plays, right? And marketers typically have struggled to do both and certainly do both at scale. And I think AI is fundamentally changing the game there. We work with a lot of sort of early adopters in terms of, and again, this is really sort of people usually use AI for quote unquote lead scoring or content generation,
Right.
not so much in terms of augmenting and making these, especially in-person experiences, better. We work with a lot of teams whose simple objective is, hey, in the next 90 days, I'm going to double my pipeline coming out of these events. That's it. That's the goal that I'm going to set for myself, my next event, and my team. How can you help, right, with agentic AI, with models, with all these capabilities? And that's been a super interesting learning for us and very exciting for us to partner with really sort of forward-looking practitioners out there.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Actually, one of my previous podcast guests almost said the same thing in terms of, hey, in-person events are coming back, almost verbatim of what you said. So there's definitely
Wonderful.
something there. So but like, if I just dig down a little bit, how does agentic AI help with it? Is it
Yeah.
driving attendance? Is it designing the event itself? Is it designing experiences at the event? Is helping with follow-up? Like, we just like a couple of examples of how it plays out?
Great question. All of that, right? So what the number one thing that we say is, hey, identify an event that's on a, let's say, 90-day horizon, right?
Sure.
A lot of the impact that you can drive today, right, literally within just minutes, if you will, is to drive all the pre-event research. Now,
Yep.
the reality is, look, it could be a dinner, sort of, let's say a CXO dinner or a customer roundtable that you're just getting customers in a local region, getting them to come over and share best practices, learning. To drive research and intelligence on those attendees, right? Not just intelligence that's available in your CRM, but intel that can be sourced from several dozen sources out on the interwebs, but also people, right? To be able to reach out to your sellers, your partners, and understand the intel on them, and to really make it relevant for it, because that's obviously the first thing. Hey, for a customer, for a CXO, to be able to even show up at the event, you really should put some thought into making it relevant. So that's number one, driving attendance with in terms of research analysis on those attendees and targets that you want to look at. And that's something that you could literally do in minutes today, right, for your next event. Now, once you drive analysis, how do you make that really not just a topical relevance, but of experiential relevance, right? How do you design these pathways? The number one thing I ask most event marketers is, hey, how's your pre-event sort of meeting orchestration coming in? How many, especially let's take the example of a trade show, right? We all love trade shows. There's a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes. And then people just walk past the booth or maybe even attend one of the breakout sessions, maybe one of the demos, and then they walk away, right? How do you make that experience at the event really personalized? And one metric you could absolutely look at that is, how effectively am I driving one-on-one or limited sort of experiences there? Number two, how personalized is that experience? Whether it is a demo at your booth, or perhaps just a exec-to-exec conversation, are you equipping the stakeholders with the right personalization, right? We've all been there where, you have this, you got thousands of leads coming out of these events and they all look the same. They all watched the same demo, attended the same breakout session, maybe looked at the same, took away the same swag, but you really do not have not just pre-event, but also at-event experiences that lead to it. And then you send over that scan badge.xls to a
hot lead.
Hot lead to this poor SDR, perhaps several time zones away from you. And I think that's where we really, as event marketers, you can take control of it and then say, look, I'm going to set myself an objective that for an event, whether it is a dinner, in person, sort of exec roundtable, to a trade show, to a major user conference. I was talking to a vendor who literally spent upwards of $1 million on one of the major summits earlier this year. And my basic conversation with the marketing leader was around, hey, so surely you're looking at about 10x that in terms of pipeline, right? Because the rule of thumb is somewhere between 8 to 12x of every dollar that goes into demand gen, your board is expecting to see outcomes from it, right? That's what is driving P&L. And I think what we're fundamentally excited about is to partner with event marketers to drive that all the way from small events to trade shows to major sort of quote unquote awareness plays that can also now yield pipeline. So we think you can start simple and then scale. And I personally think it's a good thing that in-person, more relational, personalized experiences are back, as opposed to spraying and paying and praying that your 100,000 emails hit the inboxes of the people who you really care about.
I love that. It sounds like, it really can be applied to every, pre, during, and post event. So that's cool. So that brings up a related question, similar for like, inbound. How can we use it for content creation that maybe still feels human? We've all seen the ever elongated LinkedIn posts that have even more and more emojis every day that nobody reads. So how can we stay human and use this for inbound?
Sometimes I feel guilty because maybe I'm one of the outliers, but I used to use emojis all the time prior to actually Gen AI models getting, and maybe I contributed in some teeny way to the training set that these models were trained on. I was not a huge fan of the M dash, but the Oxford comma and emojis were totally my thing.
Right.
And then this came along and it became this a sniff test of.
Yeah, you got to like ban it from your writing now. It's gone.
And I'm like, oh my God, I really have to pull back on my emoji usage, even in text, because it sounds too sloppy. But jokes aside, look, it's really, some of the numbers that we're seeing are just incredible, right? And scary. Like if you're looking at top of funnel awareness, and HubSpot famously sort of pioneered this whole genre of
Sure.
and really the religion around inbound marketing, right? I was at MIT when I remember Dharmesh walked into the digital innovation sort of guest lecture and talked about inbound marketing, and Brian was there as well, and I was like, oh my God, this is like revolutionary, right? You create inbound engines at scale that are really relevant to people, and then they come to you. Except they don't come to you no more, or increasingly, 50% or trending to 50% of searches are zero click. So as a marketeer, as a content marketeer, as a digital marketing expert, you're actually seeing a precipitous fall in that, right?
Yep.
So that's obviously a problem. Now, is this something that is a good thing or a bad thing for the internet at large, for all of that? That's all a debate that's saved for a later day. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it in the, again, as I said, the 90-day horizon, the end of year sort of, horizon, and how are you going to drive meaningful value? My usual rule of thumb is, look, the reality is, like it or not, agents are taking on a lot more of that inbound traffic, or in some cases, zero-click traffic. It's your responsibility as an inbound marketing engineer or a growth marketer to look at how to effectively use that as a channel. And what we typically work with is, let's identify like a tiered content model, and then use these sort of, let's turn really sort of this agentic experience on the evergreen content hubs. Because let's face it, you might have 10,000 assets on your corporate corporate.com. The reality is the freshness, the relevance, the personalization on all those things rarely meet the mark for most agents, whether it's ChatGPT, Gemini, or custom buyer research agents to hit that. So we typically tier the content into a layered sort of layered cake or a pyramid, and then hit that. Okay, let's actually drive up agentic experiences and scale the top of the pyramid, right? And these are probably about sort of content hubs or agentic experience hubs that you build out and then instrument it, right? Put in your evals to see, because you are not going to see traffic as much as a leading indicator. You really have to evaluate how you are being cited in ChatGPT, how you are being referred to as a source in your deep research report by Gemini or Copilot or whatever. And then that's a good 90-day exercise. And then you look at, okay, now let's actually double click and look at the personas, the ICPs that we actually cater to. And then we write content. To your point, how do we sound human, right? And I think that's, of course, technology can, again, help or be counterproductive.
Right.
What we also always recommend is, look, especially when you look at agentic experiences, provide deep context, right?
Yep.
In copywriting to contextual sort of engagement creation, unlike humans, agents have a very different definition of context. And we always encourage customers to be not just data driven. For instance, that usual tip that we use for our agents to create a more effective content is to be data driven, provide lots of numbers, quantitative sort of aspects to it, but also make it conversational, right? Turns out one of the most human ways to communicate, necessarily as copy, but in terms of conversations, is one of the best tips that you can use to drive inbound traffic, especially via agentic sources. So if you want better citations and better authority score in ChatGPT, sound more human is a fantastic way to go about doing it. And talk about it from the perspective of your customer, not from your perspective.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people make that mistake. So we're nearing the end of our time. I think we have time for maybe one more quick quick question. Well, let's talk about leadership. What do marketing leaders need to do to get ahead with Agentic AI?
Great question. So I think, ironically, as somebody with 2 engineering degrees, I'm going to sound very non-engineering on this.
Okay.
I think as leaders, especially as a marketing leader, what really matters, I think, in the next couple of years is going to be more taste, less the hard skills. Because I think in general, as a community, marketers have gotten really, really much better at the hard skills around data-driven analysis and all that. To cultivate taste is very human and is surprisingly uncommon. Cultivate taste as a marketer, encourage your teams to really build that deep expertise. Number 2, to really look at how do I drive relationships, right? Relationships matter as humans, and it's a very human thing to do that agents are not going to take over. Cultivate those relationships with sales, with your customers, with your partners, with your leadership team, right? To really sort of build value. I think that's, again, something that's honestly evergreen advice that I think is going to be super relevant in the next few years. And last but not the least, I think goes back to that notion of that bias to agency, right? That bias to action. Great, fantastic. That's a good hypothesis made out of available data. You've talked to the right people. You actually have a sense of taste that informs what your hypothesis is. Let's go do it, right? Let's go do it. Let's experiment it. Let's roll it out in the next 30 days. Observe the results. 90 days, we come back, adjust what your hypothesis was, and then iterate on it. And I think those are, quite frankly, those sort of human skills that I think really are going to matter a lot, especially in this day and age.
All right. Well, stay human. I love that advice. So very, very wise words. Appreciate you being on the show, Rajeev. How do people find you? How do they get a hold of you if they want to know more about Poexis?
Poexis.com. We take a lot of really actionable advice out there. Check out the insights section on Poexis.com for really more insightful content in terms of, especially that appeals to marketers, demand engineers, and sellers. That's probably the best way to reach us.
All right. Well, fantastic. Thanks for joining the Data Faces podcast. You've been an amazing guest. Appreciate you being here and hope to have you on in the future. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you. Likewise as well.
Cheers.
Yes.
Bye.